How inflation destroys the economy. A Health Policy 101.com production. Talk of inflation is everywhere these days. Before we discuss its effect on the economy, it is important to first define what inflation is. For the purposes of this video, inflation shall be defined as the increase in money supply, or simply printing money. This definition is far better than basing inflation on increasing prices, because our definition points us to something that we can apparently control. Another term that needs defining is economy, which is the production and distribution of goods and services in a society. This is a major determinant of the prosperity of a society. So the basic question for us today is, what happens to our prosperity when the government prints even more money? Imagine that everyone wakes up tomorrow to find out that their bank account balance is double of what it was the previous night. Since the production of goods and services, and their distribution, has not been altered, there should be no effect on the aggregate prosperity of the society. Since people have double the money to bid on these goods, everything would just double in price. But people would still be able to afford what they could afford before, and not be able to afford what they could not afford before. Therefore, it may seem that inflation had no effect on the economy of the society. Now let us add at least some realism to our scenario. It is more likely that some people end up buying assets before the prices have had time to double. Also, there are others who realize that inflation has taken place and take of loads of loans in the nominal currency to buy assets before prices have doubled. Obviously, these early buyers now accumulate real assets at the cost of the early sellers who did not realize that inflation had happened. Therefore, we can see that inflation tends to redistribute assets among people in a society depending on if they buy or sell assets, have savings, or are actively earning. However, even so, there is no aggregate change in the prosperity of the society. Why then should we be concerned about inflation? The final piece of reality of inflation is that not everyone gets the newly printed money at the same time. The government gets it and spends it first. Therefore, per the redistributive effect discussed above, the government comes to control a greater fraction of the social capital. The difference between government control of assets versus everyone else is that the government has a tendency to destroy the national resources that it controls. A good example is, in the year 2020, the federal government printed money and used it to control the human capital. It forced workers to become unemployed and not engage in anything productive to qualify for stimulus payments. Other examples would include wasteful wars, funding of higher education, building high-speed trains that have no value for people, etc. This government control and destruction of assets turns inflation from a game of winners and losers to all losers. The mechanism of the destruction caused by inflation is important to understand, so that we do not give in to phony remedies like price control, quotas, and antitrust action. Nor would it help if, instead of printing money, the government taxed the rich. The solution is for the government to stop destroying society. For more interesting discussions, visit www.healthpolicy101.com.